Good morning, everyone. I'm meteorologist Corey Thompson in the TV9 newsroom with this update about the severe weather potential as we go through the day today, Tuesday, April 16th. That shower and storm activity we've seen this morning has been fairly benign. Heavy downpours and lots of lightning in parts of the TV9 viewing area, but the severe weather risk will increase as we go through the day as more rounds of showers and storms move through. Likely multiple rounds of activity that at least have some risk for severe weather. And that's why we want you to stay weather aware for an extended period of time today. It's not one of those one and done kind of events today where we may see a couple of different rounds of potentially severe weather. We'll be taking a look at the newly updated severe weather outlook from the Storm Prediction Center. This just came down about 20 minutes ago. And if you joined us this morning on the TV9 Morning News, you'll notice that it really hasn't changed very much. The threat continues, still appears to be on track. The Storm Prediction Center believes so. We believe so too here in the TV9 Weather Lab, and we are keeping an eye on it. The potential for large hail, tornadoes, damaging wind, all there with this outlook. It's the orange area that is in what they consider on their scale an enhanced risk for severe weather, the slight risk area in yellow surrounding that, but everywhere in the TV9 viewing area carries that risk for storms to turn rather intense. In terms of the individual threats with these storms, high wind is a possibility with gusts of 60 to 70 miles per hour within thunderstorms. Hail also a pretty good possibility with these storms, especially as we go through the latter portion of the morning into the afternoon. In fact, a few of those storms could have hail that exceeds 2 inches in diameter. So that's even bigger than golf ball sized hail once you get to 2 inches or so, and pushing past that would certainly cause some damage to vehicles, even to potentially siding if it happens to fall in your neighborhood. So if you do have an opportunity to park your car indoors or under cover between now and this afternoon, not the worst idea if you can. Tornado threat also there. It's going to depend on perhaps seeing some of those isolated storms compared to lines of storms. But even within lines of storms, we know that tornadoes can develop within certain portions of those storms. And so we'll be keeping a close eye on that. Any clearing that takes place today would only serve to boost this threat a little bit. This kind of represents the high end of the potential today. And of course, as we also know from past experience, sometimes that high end potential isn't met. That would be the best outcome today if we were able to get away without much severe weather, but with a good amount of rain. That would be certainly what we would hope for. Setup for today features that area of low pressure, which has been strengthening over the past 24 hours. You'll notice it because it's windier here in eastern Iowa, and eventually it pushes a warm front through the state too. That will push our temperatures higher and also our dew points quite a bit higher. You'll probably notice that it's going to feel more humid when you walk outside later this morning into the afternoon. Those dew points could get into the 60 to 70 degree range. Probably not quite to 70, but those 60 degree dew points are something we haven't felt yet this season, and so it will be a little bit of a surprise. Pinpoint Doppler radar showing this activity that we have currently. Of course, if you're watching this on delay, in that case, this will be a little bit behind real time, and you can get the KCRG TV9 First Alert weather app for the newest updates there. Some of the stronger storm activity here in north central Iowa and up near the Decorah area. They've had some good downpours over the last little while. Starting to see some dwindling of that particular cluster of storms, but this new development in central Iowa at least showing some lightning activity as well as those downpours. Now, as we pull the radar back a little bit more and go a little bit wider on our view here, you'll notice that we do have more shower and storm activity off to our southwest. Decent amount, in fact, and some warnings out in Nebraska, Kansas, and northwest Missouri. These storms have had some reports of strong winds, had some reports of hail. There was even one report of a tornado at about 6:30 this morning in eastern Kansas. So that potential is there. This kind of serves to illustrate the type of atmosphere that we're dealing with today in terms of it being sort of the right ingredients for severe weather. Those are ingredients include wind shear, which is kind of what we describe as wind energy. It's the change in wind speed and direction with height. Plenty of that today. Certainly some strong upper level support with that wind jet stream in the area, providing that as we go through the day. Lift in the atmosphere, that low pressure system and those fronts both serving to cause upward motion in the air that allows showers and storms to develop. Instability, kind of the question mark today, whether we see just enough instability to sort of enhance that severe weather risk, and moisture will be turning plentiful as we go through the day too. Pinpoint Futurecast will give us a picture of what timing we can expect for these rounds of storms as we go over the next 12 hours or so here in eastern Iowa. This morning at about 9 o'clock, again, central Iowa kind of the hot spot for shower and storm activity at that time, but some of that pushes into eastern Iowa as soon as about 10 or 11. So if you live in our western counties, Tama, Marshalltown, up toward Charles City, even up toward Iowa Falls, an area that could see some of the shower and storm activity pushing through during that time. Notice that it starts to shift to the northeast and outrun the instability that it has access to, the energy for those storms, and diminishes a bit. We need to wait for that warm front to shift a little bit farther north, and it will during the day. The response to this strengthening low pressure will be the push of that warmer and more humid air mass farther north through the day. By noon, new storms likely, or the second line of storms that we saw in central Nebraska, will be pushing east into the state. They enter the western counties by around noon. The early afternoon hours from the Interstate 380, Highway 218 corridor endpoints to the west, that's when your severe weather threat really starts to pick up. So that'll be a time that you'll be wanting to pay close attention to that potential. And notice that wind shift. I'm going to draw it on here, the warm front that we have across the area. By this time at about 2 o'clock, it'll be approaching the Highway 20 corridor. So along and south of that will be where the highest severe weather risk will be during this time. To the north of it, the risk is still there, but we're talking more about hail, maybe a little bit of damaging wind as those storms cross that boundary. Right along that boundary, tornado potential also there as storms cross it, but once they go to the north of it, that potential tends to diminish just a little bit. Another thing I want to point out here, Pinpoint Futurecast highlighted, and it's something that we'll be watching out for as we go through the afternoon. This gap, this space between these two lines of storms, if we get a gap here, and especially if we get one with clearing, that could enhance this third area of precipitation we see here entering our western counties at about 3 or 4 o'clock this afternoon. Even half an hour to an hour of sunshine would be more than enough to give us a little extra energy in the atmosphere and perhaps make those storms a little bit stronger. Something certainly to watch out for, and we'll be keeping a close eye on that as we go through the afternoon. Some computer models that we use to help make our forecast showing that gap either very small or non-existent. That may limit the intensity of that third line, but we're just hopeful that we get away with not much in the way of severe weather today. But if that line does develop and spreads to the northeast, watch it move through the area. Cedar Rapids, Iowa City, again, 5 or 6 o'clock, could be facing another round of strong to severe storms. They shift to the northeast and toward the Dubuque area by 7 or 8, and then we start to see things diminish. That storm activity pushes out of the area past the Mississippi River. We're left with isolated scattered storms. Now, overnight, we cannot fully rule out the potential for a little bit of strong storm activity. We'll be watching it closely. We'll be here around the clock, keeping an eye on things. But the chance really does start to dwindle as winds shift and we lose that instability. Tomorrow, the focus for new thunderstorm activity may be developing early in the morning in Illinois and Wisconsin, but it should generally be to our east. Now, the hail ingredients today certainly are present. We have a little bit of that this morning already in place. But as we build a little bit of energy and the upper level winds become more favorable, that chance increases this afternoon. Same story as we go for those ingredients that favor tornadic thunderstorms. Not really in place this morning. It's going to be till later this morning into the afternoon where that starts to build up a little bit here in eastern Iowa as well. So that time frame between about noon and 7 is where we have that chance for some storms that could contain tornadoes. Another thing to keep in mind today, folks, is that things will be very fast moving. 45 to 55 miles per hour at least in terms of how fast those storms will be going. Not only could that serve to enhance the chance for wind with some of those storms, maybe also just make it a little harder to react in terms of when those storms arrive and how much time you have after a warning is issued to take action. So when warnings are issued today, we really do want you to sort of pay attention and sort of go to those safe places that we encourage all the time right away. I got a question in the chat from the YouTube channel. Is the current tornado threat based on the clearing occurring, or will the threat be even higher if clearing takes place? It's a little bit of a blend of both. So it's anticipating at least some gaps between showers and storm rounds this morning into the afternoon hours, which still does look likely. And we see some signs of that developing out in Kansas as well as Nebraska. Great space between those two lines, some clearing in between. And so we'll have to see how that evolves over the next few hours. If new storms kind of fill in, then that may start to diminish that tornado threat just a little bit. But if we see that substantial clearing stay and that progresses into the state, that would make that chance a little bit higher than perhaps even as it stands right now. So it's certainly something that we're paying very, very close attention to. Very good question with that. Another note from Donna in the YouTube chat, making sure all my devices are charged in case of power outage. Great idea. Make sure to keep your phone charged, other devices such as that, as you go through the day, just sort of top them off, throw them on the charger earlier than you might. on a normal day. You typically, I don't know about you, I usually try to get to the end of the day without having to charge it. Usually do, but I'm stuck with 30 or 40%. We learned with extended power outages, sometimes you need that power, but where are you going to get it from once the power goes out? So not a bad idea for sure, Donna. Really, really like that point. Let's talk a little bit about receiving information today, and this is especially important for folks that are in Linn County that use weather radios. The weather radio transmitter in Cedar Rapids is having technical difficulties. It may work from time to time, but the Weather Service is saying that it's not reliable, and they're waiting on a part at this point. That part's not going to get here in time for today, unfortunately. So don't count on the weather radio necessarily going off if you live in the Cedar Rapids area. That's why we always encourage having multiple reliable ways to get weather information. Of course, KCRG TV9 is one of them. That's what we promise here as part of our First Alert Storm Team coverage, is that we're going to give you that look at storms as they're occurring as soon as we possibly can. Otherwise, the KCRG TV9 First Alert Weather app. Wireless emergency alerts are built into smartphones that have been made in the last several years. Make sure those are turned on. They're not going to go off for every storm, but for tornado warnings and destructive severe thunderstorms, they will go off. It's not a promise, though. All of these things have potential failure points, and that's why we say if you have several, it's likely that you'll get at least one notification for these storms as they move through. That's the best way to address this situation as we look ahead. Of course, just sort of a reminder, if a warning is issued for your area, take action quickly, especially today because of the storms moving pretty quickly today, 45 to 55 miles per hour at least as these storms pass by. Get to a safe place. Even in a severe thunderstorm warning, we always encourage you to stay away from outside walls and windows, inside rooms as well as your basement. Still not a bad idea in a severe thunderstorm too. It may seem like overkill to some folks, but in some cases better safe than sorry. Certainly lowest floor. Get off the top floor of your house. If it's in the case of a tornado warning, blankets, pillows to cover your body and head with, head particularly to keep that safe. Get under something sturdy too, especially in a tornado warning. Table, bench, desk, whatever you may have. As well as even in the case of a tornado, a bike helmet can help if you have one of those. Certainly just something to keep in mind. And of course, use all those tools, weather radio, especially if you live outside of Cedar Rapids, as well as our various other tools. Now, if you're out and about, of course, life goes on. We can't just necessarily call everything off for the day. Just get inside a sturdy building if you're in a warning. If a warning is issued for your area, that's the best bet. Find a structure that looks particularly safe. A big box store like a big department store, one of sort of Walmart, Target type stores that are large with a flat roof, not the best protection. I'd find something a little sturdier than that in terms of a smaller building that may be of a slightly sturdier construction. Don't park under overpasses or bridges. That's not the place to be. In fact, you're actually safer outside of your vehicle if a tornado is approaching your area in a low, flat area. But that's kind of a last resort. That's when you have to get down in a ditch, cover your head, crouch, try to get as low as you possibly can to keep yourself safe because wind speeds in a tornado actually decrease as quick as possible closest to the ground. Now, we strongly encourage you to find a safer structure if you can. If you find yourself in that. Of course, one thing to note, the difference between a watch and a warning. Again, for some folks it's common sense. Others, they may not be familiar with these terminologies across our area, maybe new to the neighborhood and just don't know about these types of things. A weather watch, severe thunderstorm watch or tornado watch indicates that conditions are favorable and that the severe weather threat is within the next few hours in your area. A warning means that severe weather is imminent. A storm is headed your way or is taking place where you're at right now. And that's when you need to do some of those immediate safety precautions to help keep yourself safe. If you're just joining us, we'll recap, give you a little look at the Storm Prediction Center's latest outlook for severe weather today. It really hasn't changed very much since this morning. It still calls for an enhanced risk of severe weather for the area outlined in orange. Large hail, tornadoes, and damaging wind all possible. And again, some of these areas from, let's say, Fayette over toward Iowa Falls, points to the south. Decorah, Charles City, Prairie du Chien, just outside of that slightly higher risk area, but still faces the chance for especially damaging wind and hail up that way. If you're along and south of the warm front, that's where that tornado risk is. You see it highlighted here in this reddish-orange color on the right side of your screen. Any isolated storm would carry a higher threat for that chance, although it could occur within lines of storms too. Large hail, a possibility in any storm today, especially as we build up some of that energy as we go toward the afternoon and evening. High winds, still possible, kind of a secondary threat today, but certainly something we'll be watching out for. And don't be surprised if you find yourself in a severe thunderstorm warning accounting for that. timing on these storms. We'll pull up Pinpoint Futurecast one more time. Some activity in central Iowa this morning, likely shifting to the east over the next few hours and giving us that potential for a round of showers and storms later this morning. But it looks like it'll be late morning, closer to lunchtime this afternoon and evening when we have the higher potential for some areas of severe weather. So we'll go forward to noon here. You see that push of storms out of central Iowa this morning kind of loses its punch a little bit in northeast Iowa, outrunning the best conditions for severe weather. But that storm system in central Iowa by the afternoon hours holds together. And so we'll be keeping an eye on that as it potentially moves into our area between noon and 2 for areas along and west of the Highway 218 Interstate 380 corridor through the TV9 viewing area. Into the afternoon hours, the potential for a second line of storms to develop as we look toward western portions of the viewing area again by about 3 or 4 o'clock. Those storms, in addition to the first line shifting to the northeast, that gives us a couple of rounds of shower and storm potential, each of which could contain some strong to severe storms. So that's kind of the reminder that if you have one round of storms move through earlier this afternoon, may not be done for the day. Certainly need to stay weather aware as we look ahead toward the rest of the afternoon and evening. A couple of follow-ups. Colbin says, thanks for keeping us informed. That's what we try to do. It's part of the job here in TV9. We always promise that we do our best to give you the information when we know it. Ash says, any public storm shelters in Winfield? Mom's got an apartment complex without a basement. It's a good question. Don't know for sure about Winfield. Think about consulting local government officials there. If you know somebody in the neighborhood, maybe a neighbor that does live in a house that has a basement, that might be a good option for her. Otherwise, in an apartment building, for most situations, they're pretty well constructed. If you get inside an interior hallway away from exterior walls and windows, protect your head and neck. That'll be a pretty good place to be, certainly if a warning is issued. If that's your only option, it's something you can give a shot. Thanks for joining me this morning. We're going to be watching this all throughout the day. Additional updates on KCRG TV9, the KCRG TV9 First Alert Weather app. If you don't have that already, we strongly encourage you to get it, and KCRG.com as well. Just stay weather aware as we go through the next several hours, and we'll get through it together. Thanks for joining me this morning.